my hand goes down.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thank you for giving up your time to tell us about being a geologist. So to start off with, could you explain to us what a geologist is?
A geologist is someone who studies the earth, the resources of the earth, the water, the coal, all that sort of stuff. So we are interested in finding those resources and exploiting those resources and understanding how the earth works.
Okay. Why did you decide to become a geologist?
Because I had a very good teacher in high school. It got me all enthused about geology. And then I got a scholarship at university, so it paid the fees to go to university, so that's why I did.
Was it hard doing it and studying it?
No, well, I enjoyed it because I love science. I love the idea of going out in the bush, doing field work, looking at rocks, trying to figure out what they're telling you about their history and that sort of thing. So that's why I enjoyed it. It's work, but it's enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Okay. As a geologist, where do you work and study?
Well, you work both in the field, so out in the bush, and also in the lab. So you can collect rock samples in the field, and then you can get them cut into very thin slices. They're in fact thin enough that you can look through them on a microscope. So then you can figure out what the minerals are in the rock. So you do lab work as well as field work.
So whereabouts in the bush do you go?
I've done lots of different projects. So the last major one I had was up between Kempsey and Taree. It's on what's called the Hastings block. So it's about 3,000 square kilometres. It's forest, so it's covered with forestry tracks. So it was mainly driving around and looking at outcrops and mapping out the rocks in that area. But recently I've been working out near Cowra at Wangler Dam. That's about 350 kilometres west of Sydney. So I've been studying granites, which geologists don't normally do, because structural geologists like me are interested in folds and faults, and granites are igneous rocks, so I'm a bit unusual in that respect.
When you go on a field trip, what equipment do you need to bring with you?
Well, I wear gear against, field gear, decent boots, and I take a compass. I'm usually measuring stuff up in the field, so I take a compass, and I take a GPS, so I know exactly where I am in terms of the earth, so I can position myself on the earth, GPS. And I usually take a geology pick because I need to break rocks up. And since I've been working on granites, I've actually used a blockbuster, like a 10 kilogram hammer, which is big enough to break granite.
Where's your most interesting place you've travelled to for a field trip?
Well, we went to, the whole family came to Death Valley. That was fascinating, out in the desert inland of California, and it's quite spectacular. It's as I said, it's a desert, and it's got very high mountains, some with snow on them, and it sometimes rains, although not very often. And there's these huge alluvial fans out in the desert, and they're so big, they're like 20 kilometres and with a very low slope on them. And we drove onto one of these, and you actually don't have to, the car doesn't have to do anything because it just glides along the road down into the Death Valley. So Death Valley is actually below sea level, so it's the valleys are below sea level and the mountains are thousands of metres high, so it's very impressive.
Have you made any exciting discoveries as a geologist?
Well, they're exciting for me, but not maybe for the general public. So, I mean, that area that I've looked at between Kempsey and Taree, that's probably was a couple of 100 kilometres further south originally, and then it's moved and probably rotated into its current position. So you've got a big 3,000 square kilometre bit of Earth's crust, which is rotated and displaced, moved a couple of 100 kilometres north. So I found that was pretty exciting, yeah.
What scientific skills do you use as a geologist?
Reasoning, to argue about why things are the way they are, and then to come up with testable ideas about the Earth. So scientific methodology underpins all my work, really. I've got to come up with an idea and then go out in the field. What ways could I test that idea, and then go and test that idea then. And usually you find that it doesn't all work out nicely, and that only generates a whole lot more questions, and then you try to address those questions. So it's a very, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards type process.
What is the best and worst thing about being a geologist?
The best thing is being able to go out in the field, because it's great fun to go and look at rocks out in the bush, try to figure out what happened to them and how they got there and so. The worst thing, of course, could be the weather, which can be, you can get rained on. Well, I've been rained on a few times. Or you have to walk through very thick bush, or being eaten alive by mosquitoes and stuff. So I worked in Papua New Guinea, and it's incredibly hot and very humid, so it's not very pleasant.
Paul, why is it important to have geologists around?
Well, mainly to find the resources that underpin our society. So the oil, the iron ore for steel making, the gold, which is in fact not a very useful element, but it's metal, but it's used a lot. And the trace elements, which are used in phones, mobile phones, and all sorts of other electronic gadgets. So if you haven't got geologists looking for this stuff, then it's hard. Sometimes we can replace metals, but we haven't been able to find how to replace them. So we need a geologist to find them.
And lastly, how would you convince young people like me to consider studying geology?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's a good career because it's inside-outside type career. If you're at least any which way interested in working outdoors, geology's a good career. And as you get older, of course, you mainly manage other people to do the field work. So it's got both, really, in the longer term. Yeah. So I'm hoping to convince you to become a geologist.
Well, hopefully. Yes.
Are you interested in science?
Yeah, I like science.
Right. So you're doing science at school. That's what this is part of.
Yes.
Very good. So what have you got to do now?
Now I just need to write a transcript of it. So I'll use the video and write that up. And then I'll have to make a website about it.
Oh.
And then present it to class.
Oh, very good. Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I hope you do well on this. It's good. Yeah. Well done with your questions.
Thank you.